All right, we're getting close. Here we go. Let's see. Got this button. If I push this one,
You have to slab it.
That's not what I want. How about this one? This is very AI.
De-engineering.
That's right. That's what we're worried about. Okay, here we go. Wake up everything. And ladies and gentlemen, here we go. And showtime works. There we go. Hi. Welcome. It's Friday. It's we made it through. We made it through the week, and I've been trying to keep track of if more fan shit combinations could happen in one particular week, just kind of in general. And I gotta say, I'm not a big believer in astrology, but I'm a big fan of like solar flares and magnetic space waves can affect the psyche of people more than we realize, and that someday in the future there'll be some sort of solar flare report like, hey, the reason everybody's freaking out, your friend's an asshole all of a sudden, or you keep forgetting why you walked into that room is because solar flares are up today, and you might want to just chill for a little while. Sort of the scientific version of Mercury in retrograde. You know what I mean? You're familiar with the idea of Mercury in retrograde, where everything kind of, when Mercury through the sky, we're passing through it. It's instead of following with us, there's a period where we go past it, or the other way around, and it screws up communications or something like that. The idea, the generalized thing in astrology is that communications get more difficult, and since we communicate through technology, it affects more technology and all that kind of stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was some sort of like, science-based version of there. Yeah, there's a solar flare report that I get on Threads. I'll try and find it. Yeah, it definitely is out there, but and I've looked at them too. It's just there will be a point where it will be that'll be a big point of the news that today, like, hey, the news is going to seem kind of nuts today, but that's because there's a big solar flare and people didn't put on their tinfoil hats. And remind you, if you're going to go outside today, please put on your tinfoil hat before you go out. We're going to find out that the tinfoil hat people were just a little off instead of a lot off. They were just, you know what I mean? They're just slightly off in, yeah. Anyways, Summer's under the weather. I'm just finally on sort of the other side of my whole shoulder thing. So, I literally have not been outside the house except for other work. It's like COVID all over again. It's very weird because I have so much shit to do. It's very strange. Anyways, and part of it is taking care of my girl. So, a little bit of a minor late start this morning because also Texas Paul's going to be joining us in the second hour, and that will be very exciting. And it's Friday, so he can swear all he wants to. He doesn't have to worry about it at all. We've let him know that it is okay for him to cuss up a storm. Also, chat room, feel free. I gotta say, I don't think we're going to get any major trouble. I don't think there's a terms of service kind of thing. If you're concerned at all, I would recommend throwing a dash in your expletives or a period between the letters if you're just being really ultra naughty. But I'm pretty sure you're in the clear. I don't think I can. I do too, Brenda. She said it's a rough one. It's a cussing pond. Absolutely. Yes, and realtexaspaul.com is his website, and I think twitch.tv/realtexaspaul is his Twitch channel, which I got to figure out when he's on, what his schedule is, if he actually has a schedule, and we need to throw a raid his way or what have you. How I'm obsessed with the Darfur story you teased. I hope you get back to it. I absolutely will, Robin. I'm making graphics for it. You know how a little bit ago when we got through some of the more bullshit. I mean, it's hard to say more bullshit than usual, but the Hunter Biden story and the timeline that Jim Jordan was kind of putting together was completely off, and I put together that little like presentation about that. I'm making one about that shows sort of the offshoot factions and who they represent and what's happening a little bit, just because it's fucking complicated. No news from Dan Ball. Nope, none whatsoever. I keep checking my junk folder and my regular folder, but his booker has not reached out. I dropped my contact email in his feed right after the "I'll have my booker contact you" shit. If anybody wants to hit him up again and go, hey, it's bookhal@icloud.com, have your booker contact. It's pretty fucking on the nose. He's Sunday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 a.m. CS Central Time. Okay, so that's Wednesday, Friday, Central Time. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Well, then I guess he'd have to raid me then. So, anyways, lots of stuff to cover today. Let me jump right in with probably the biggest AI news that there is, which is the boring side of it, and then I'll get to the silly side of it, which is kind of fun. And I hope you enjoyed the thumbnail that I made. I was very proud of myself this morning. It took a little bit. I had a conversation with, you know what? I should bring that up. I should actually show you guys that as well. Well, let me get to this, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. The new thing, and I gotta say, AI as my co-pilot is the scariest satanic bumper sticker that the Glenn Becks of the world have ever seen, and it's right around the fucking corner. Along with like ChatGPT is my co-pilot, Bard is my co-pilot, Claude is my co-pilot. Claude, if you don't know, is another AI. I guess in terms of Google's Alexa and our aforementioned friend, who I won't say out loud because she's right there, she's listening, from Apple. And Claude is another one. His last name, interestingly enough, considering my open debate thing, is his last name is Balls. Just, throwing that out there. Anyways, so yeah, Copilot is it's not surprising that Microsoft kind of jumped on that right away. And that's exactly what AI is going to be. It is not going to take people's jobs. It is going to augment people's jobs almost across the board, because humans like interacting with humans. And there is a huge limitation in the digital world out into the real world. And it will be, in some ways, think of the things that you hate to do about your job, or you don't like doing, or you particularly outside your skill set, and that you don't want to develop. I don't need to develop, I don't know, my corporate speech skills. If I'm talking about, comedy or whatever, and I've got to speak to a corporation, writing up a version of it and then having a digital version of me do it on video or in one of those hologram boxes is a solution that AI could do. That would be a co-pilot for me. Or future stages at comedy clubs, small comedy clubs, could get these like giant boxes on stage. Like there's this guy who has this almost holographic technology thing inside these boxes. You're going to see how big they can get them, and if they can kind of open face them out to where it looks like a stage, you could see what looks like effectively a 3D production, minor production, I guess, until it gets integrated with Unreal Engine, and I get to do a play someplace sitting on boxes, but to you it looks like I'm sitting on volcanic rock next to a Viking or something. But that's coming. But for the time being, these sort of secondary presentational things where like I can't tour all the time, can't go everywhere. Most small towns couldn't expect big performers to be there, and the U2s and the Kisses and the Lady Gagas and the Pinks and the Peter Gabriels of the world could do a major show like these Phantom Presents things, They'll do a concert someplace, and instead of you just watching it on a movie screen and going, "Oh, it's nice to see it on a big screen," but kind of missing the concert feel, there'll be a version of it where it's nearly nearly three-dimensional. That's coming, right? But and because these artists couldn't possibly tour everywhere else, so that would be the AI version of touring musicians, touring artists. Their addendum is it's not going to take over their job. It's not going to perform in their stead. It may be, and I would not rule this out, that through augmentation, and this would be so fucking cool, is a 3D viewing experience where you don't have to wear glasses because there's a lens. There's a giant, basically glass screen that you're looking through, and behind it is this projected image. And what you can see is a 3D rendering of a concert from 1972 using all the available footage, creating this. This is kind of shit that's on its way. And artists that have been around for a long time, where you're like, I wish I'd seen them live in their heyday, will be able to do, will be able to Tupac their way through a show to some degree with these giant things where it's just like you're seeing the show there. And, I don't know, somewhere in the order of 10 years after that, they'll be relatively interactive. So they won't say, hello, Cleveland in Toledo. They'll say whatever your town is. That's coming. That's a thing. That's really going to occur. So you'll get to see people that have passed away or you never got to see live, or that they have footage of somebody performing, like one of my personal favorites, Prince. They filmed so many fucking shows at Paisley Park for his tours that they could put together a posthumous 3D concert experience where he interacts with the town that he's in. I'm not kidding. That's on its way. And that's my I'm gonna come up with some like AI Nation or something like that to compete with Live Nation, and that's gonna be my workaround. If I was gonna bet on an entertainment window, that'd be it. So everybody else though, Copilot. So whatever your job is, if you indeed have any extraneous accounting that it needs to keep track of or what have you, or you need effectively like a travel agent because you're on the road all the time that's constantly updating stuff, that will be part of your gig, and it'll either be on your phone or in a chip in your head or some shit, but eventually that's where it's going to be. And that's where everybody's leaning in this. Now, I want to show you one other thing. Let's see if it's right up here. Is it this guy? Yeah, this was fucked up. New AI tool can predict the risk of a deadly heart attack 10 years out. Now, I got to tell you, this is enough to give you a heart attack. The idea that it can look at your heart health and go, hey, you're headed in a direction where eventually your arrhythmia is going to kind of overrun itself and get you. Effectively, that's what it does. It looks at the timing of your heart and the valves working in concert, so that they start to get out of sync, and that's one of the ways you can get an arrhythmia and a heart attack. There's a myriad of ways that you can tell someone's headed in that direction. Certainly, you can scan for plaque buildup, but that would be an obvious one as well. But there are ways that, multiple ways that this could do this. Yeah. And it's like, hey, you better change your shit or you're going to have a heart attack. A lot of doctors can tell that now. But if they tell you, most people are like, fuck off. Right? They don't necessarily buy it. But in this case, I think a lot of people are like, the computer says you're going to die in 10 years if you keep that shit up. You're like, guy, oh, God. So, Tony's been booted from Facebook. Oh, I see. Okay, so are we getting, by the way, speaking of AI, one of the things that ChatGPT has been going through right now is a dedicated denial of service attack. There's been a lot of attacks on it. Interestingly enough, leading up to Xi Jinping's visit at the APEC summit, which I'll get to in just one second as well, which I got to tell you, I gotta tell you, Glenn Beck's not gonna like the stories. Okay, so this is one of the story. This is in Forbes. Um, Getting people in AI on the same page, how AI benefits all departments beyond tech. All right, this is what they're trying to fucking make happen. This is the hardest part because I got to tell you, it took me. I told you about those like AI bots that I'm working on making my own little AI assistants for certain tasks that I've been tinkering with in the background around this. Um, the hardest part was sitting down and going, all right, what stuff would I outsource? And that's part of my problem too, because I'm used to being a one man band and I get myopic in my focus and I just soldier ahead with what I'm working on. And could some of my stuff be automated or outsourced to another human being? Absolutely. But it's very hard for me to let go of those things. It's just my nature, mainly because I've been, like I said, I've been largely a one man band my entire life. So, love the idea of having a team sometime, but good Lord. And so it's hard for me, even when I had an assistant regularly, it was hard for me to come up with shit for them to do because I felt bad having them do it. Right? You know what I mean? I'll do it. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll do it. Like, Summer and I are the same way too. Like, we had cleaners come to the house when there's people coming over, we have guests or whatever on the regular, and because we're both very busy, we're like, we need to get some cleaners. Somebody at least just mop the floors on the regular because we have cats and cats have hairballs, and we can do what we can to chase stuff down. But it'd be nice to have somebody come in and do a once over every so often. And even still, she and I clean up the night before for the cleaners. It was the running gag about those vans that you see in LA that advertise topless cleaners. That was that was a thing in LA for a while. There were these vans parked on the side that were like topless maids. And we're like, fuck do I want a topless maid for? I mean, that would make me clean my own place. The only reason I clean my apartment is if there's going to be a naked woman in it. I invite a naked woman over so she can clean. That's ridiculous. I think that would actually work. I probably could, like, they'd show up, go, ding dong, hi, I'm here for your, no pun intended, I'm here the topless maid service. I already cleaned it. I gotta tell you, I was so nervous that you were gonna be in here and without enough clothing on, so I scoured the fucking place. I mean, you could eat off the floor. I'm not suggesting you do. I'm just saying thanks very much for just the near miss. Right. So, is an AI subject to whomever programmed it? Yes, within reason. The difference is that these things learn, so it doesn't stay as stupid as you are. It grows and adapts. One of the things that it does regularly, and that's going to be the hard part for people like me, and yes, I'm sleeping with my maid because of me. Yeah, topless maid service, is there such a thing? Yes, there is. It's in the LA. I mean, it's other places too, but that's, yeah. So anyways, making her eat off the floor is extra kink charge. I couldn't do it. So anyways, the idea that, like, I have to brainstorm about what I would outsource to these things, and and one of the reasons is because if you wanted to do these tests, you kind of have to share a lot of information with it. It's a huge trust game. So anyways, it's pretty fascinating. Why is my little sticker moved around? That's not good. That's right. That's the way to move it. It's crooked. Hold on, sorry. There you go. The light thing moves when I talk. I moved the mic up so it would be clearer because I was having volume issues. That's why people are noticing it. Anyways. Yep, topless maid service around LA. It's a thing. Thank you for backing me up, Javier. My uncle got cleaned out of his petty cash stash. Oh, like, well, that, See, I guess the other thing about a nude maid or cleaning man service, I guarantee there's a male version of it if that's your thing. Is that it's harder for them to steal from you. A, no pockets. B, and B, you'd never take your eyes off them. So, they expect to be watched, I guess. You know what I mean? Whereas if you're watching your regular maid, they'd be like, "What are you staring at?" I'm like, but if they're naked, you're like, that's kind of the gig. So, it's the trust aspect that a lot of people are going to have trouble with at some point. And it's just like meeting a friend and a new person, and how much you're going to treat, like, how long do you have to know somebody before you would give them their give give them your ATM pin, for example? Long fucking time. Now some people get a new assistant, and what they do is give them a credit card with a certain limit on it, give them a debit card with a certain limit on it, their own PIN card, and they can use that, and that's that. And that's how they rotate through it. Whenever you see a celebrity that fires their assistant all the fucking time, that's pretty much how it works. And I would suggest that while we don't want to learn everything from the divas and pricks in Hollywood and industry, that is one thing we can take away from it. I don't do ads for companies, but I do recommend privacy.com. I don't know if you're familiar, but it can take a debit card or a bank account that you have, and you line it up with that, and it makes temporary credit cards and debit cards that you can use for purchases online, that can be either you can set a limit on it where they can only, it can only be charged this much per year. You can make one that's just for your subscriptions. Oh, CSL, there you go. Clean and jerk. Quit it, you guys. You can make, you can use one for all your subscription services, can be on one of these things, so you're not putting a real credit card on there. You can make one for utilities. You can make one for just Amazon. You can make one for just Best Buy or just Costco or whatever you want. And it's technically all out of the same bank account, but it narrow shoots it. And the interesting thing about privacy is it doesn't have to have your real name on it and your real address or any of that shit. So none of that has to be true when you fill it out on a, when they ask on a subscription service what your address is, and you're like, fuck, does it make? It's a digital service. What the fuck do you need my address for, right? With privacy.com, you don't have to put your real address, which is kind of cool. Anyways, so I would suggest that privacy.com needs to do a big ad campaign. Maybe that would be my first ad that I would do. Do a big ad campaign that people can go, hey, if you're working with AI and you want AI to do some tasks for you and stuff, set up your little AI card and only give them this limit and only let them go this far with it, so you don't get your bank account drained by a glitch. We are the guardian for that part. It's kind of like setting up a PayPal account that only allows certain that kind of stuff. You were selling your address to the coupon companies. Yeah, that's exactly right. So I would say the great thing about the privacy.com thing is that you don't have to, none of the information has to be right. It's really fascinating. Like the card number on it and the date, the expiration date, and the little security code has to be right. But your name and all that shit, when you fill it in on a site, none of it has to be right. It's cool. So pairing those things together with like AI running errands for you, regularly buying certain groceries again and again, which there are some built-in things on Amazon and other stuff, or subscription services and that kind of stuff that keep up and then sends you a little reminder like, hey, you've been subscribed to this for a little while. That's it. Yeah. Do you want to keep doing it? Those pairings, I think, will be a big deal. So just people are having a hard time figuring out what to hand off. Now, this is the part that I want to bring up just because it will irritate. Welcome to Friday AI. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, that kind of stuff. Again, I know I'm ahead of the game on this, and I know this story isn't as exciting and but let me tell you, this stuff is going to affect your life more than any single story happening anywhere, or any combination of a lot of stories that are happening. So this is the one I like. You want to see the story that's going to really irritate the folks? Oh, wait, hold on. This is their version of it. Hold on. This is it. I had another story about somebody. That was the GB site. She revealed the extent of China's economic woes by the speed at which he caved to some of Biden's demands. Now, I gotta say, I'm sure that Glenn Beck and Pat and Stu and are gonna do everything they can to avoid this article or any of the other articles about this, because this is exactly what happened. It's going to be fun in a couple of years. We look back at some of these new tools and say Hal was right. Yes, I agree, Al Stinko Farce. Thank you. They get out. I mean, and there's now. I will say there's some debate in all the talk about Biden being bumbling and slow and yada yada yada. And them taking digs at him. I'll show you the article where they're like, they're taking digs at him for mispronouncing some of these tech firm names because they're fucking made up, and he's like, whatever. He tries to pronounce it, and he's like, I don't even know if I'm getting it right. It's better to just not say it. And he just starts talking about business, which is fine. Because guess what? A lot of these AI companies aren't going to last because they're gonna be put out of business by AI. It's hilarious, but. The one thing that's coming from all this that everybody's kind of agreeing is that she doesn't seem to be playing with a full deck. That the issue is like how he's talking, and the fact that he wanted to meet with these Iowa farmers that he met when he was vice president and vice communist of the CCP back in the day. He wanted to meet with, he's had pen pals in Iowa for a long time. It's very strange. But he met with these folks at the APEC. They flew a bunch of them in because he's been, he's known them for years. And it's pointing to this idea that the stress of what's going on in his country is getting to him far worse than anything Biden has to deal with. So I'll show you. This is the she and President Joe Biden had their first meeting in a year this week. By the way, first official sit across the day. They met on the sidelines last time, but this is official big talks. And who went to whose country? Let's just start there. Who went to whose country? And I'm not talking about Hu Jintao. We are not talking about a U.S. president flying to Beijing, hat in hand, like Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, right? Or indeed bringing him to Mar-a-Lago to this private house to kind of wag your classified documents in his face, right? She, who hasn't left the country in any meaningful way in 4 years, except to go to Russia, and that's the only back and forth they've had, came to the United States, came to San Francisco. She entered the talks in an unfamiliar position of weakness amid China's economic woes. I know. Hal, does it ever get boring being that right all the fucking time? No. I gotta say, I'm getting used to it. You know what I mean? I'm nestled in. I'm snug as a bug in a rug. The Chinese leader seemed keen to secure American investment. Well, good luck in your senior year, as Joe Biden would say. Let's see. The Chinese economy, after decades of growth, has hit problems. Really? Has it? Has it hit problems? Is that what happened? It's hit problems, has it? They've hit problems. They haven't just recognized they're in deep shit and are and they have a reckoning going on there. Right. With a property market filled debt crisis, spiking unemployment, and causing investors to leave the country. I don't know if I would call that hitting a problem. With a property market fueled debt crisis, there's supposed to be a comma here, I think. Spiking unemployment, because it's not like the property market fueled debt crisis was spiking the unemployment. I don't know, there's a comma missing. And causing investors to leave the country. Now, I got news for you. The property market fueled debt crisis and the spiking unemployment are not what are causing investors to leave the country. As a matter of fact, if you're familiar with how these shark fucking venture capitalists work, those fuckers perch on a branch like goddamn vultures, waiting for a debt crisis and spiking unemployment in a country. Are you shitting me? That's what large swaths of the business community look for in a country to invest in. Right? So you think that's why they're leaving? They're leaving because China keeps stealing all their IP, and the results of the work are now turning to crap and slave fucking labor. That's why. They can't hide the fact, or they can't pretend to not know now that China is, or they've realized over time, I'll give them three possibilities, that China's using slave labor in nearly every industry now. For fuck's sake. The cotton in the clothing, if your clothes say made in China or Fabrique au Chine, the cotton that was picked by slaves. We fought a war in this country to stop that shit. That's why they're leaving. That's why they're moving. They're not leaving because of spiking unemployment and a property market fueled debt crisis. They wish they could stay in because of those two things. Lord Almighty. Yes, money is shuffling over to Vietnam, which is, points to that thing I was telling you guys yesterday, where Biden made that point when he was talking to the APEC CEOs, was like, oh my God, I can't believe, look what time does. Here we are talking to the Vietnamese. That's fantastic, Ed's 3D Tech. She touched on in a pitch to U.S. business leaders Wednesday. He was at pains to stress his commitment to peaceful coexistence with the U.S. It was a stark contrast to recent public remarks by the Chinese president, where he sought to blame crises and conflicts across the globe on U.S. meddling. It's funny when your hat comes off your head and is in your hand all of a sudden. How quick the fucking tap dance starts. Fucking hell. Taking away the moments that make up the dull day. Yeah. Xi's predicament highlights that although the U.S. and China are at diplomatic loggerheads, their economies remain intertwined across a range of sectors. Yes, and the U.S. is in the process of detangling that shit and getting the fuck out. And the only reason we're not doing like the fucking Roadrunner exiting is because some of the businesses that are intertwined over there, especially in the technological manufacturing sector, which is just assembly, let's be honest. It's assembly. They get shit assembled over there. It's not Fabrique au Chine. It's Assembly au Chine or something. But that part of it, it's the made in China label that's fucked with people so long that they actually think like the iPad is made in China or the iPhone is made in China. It's not. It's assembled in China. Like the fucking the silicon for the glass comes from North Carolina. The chips are manufactured in either Taiwan or in the United States, and increasingly here. So, yeah. In his meeting with Biden on the sidelines of the APEC summit, Xi agreed to several of the American president's requests after only 4 hours of discussions. He agreed to clamp down on China's role in the manufacture of chemicals used to make fentanyl, the drug that has devastated millions of lives in the U.S. I think the deal on cracking down on fentanyl, precursor chemicals, and narcotics equipment was a big win for the United States, given the number of Americans who die from opioids every year. A fellow from the Center for Asian Policy Studies said on Institute's podcast, I think this is a concrete outcome that President Biden will be able to point to that he achieved by sitting down with Xi that could resonate with everyday American voters. She also agreed on measures. They have to do it, though, and that's the trick. They have to actually be good partners in this. They'll tell you a fucking story. That's the problem. But the fact that he came here, like I said, and they had this meeting in the United States is a big telltale sign. Plus, they know it's going to take time for investment to come back into China, and that they have to play a bit of a long game to convince them that it's worth doing, even if they're setting another trap like they did in the late 90s, which is effectively what happened. They're like, we don't need you fuckers anymore. Everything that's been invented, it can be invented, has been invented, so we're going to just shut the door and fuck off. And then AI came around and technology leaps, jump leaps and bounds ahead, and it's going to reinvent the global economy and reinvent human interaction. And they're like, the door's shutting. And they got their fucking dick caught in the car door, and now they're like, I mean it this time. We'll be nice. Yeah, not so much. Okay, another U.S. priority, reestablishing top-level military communications that were cut off after Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan last year was also signed off on by Xi. New York Times noted just how quickly Xi agreed to the demands, with previous U.S.-China deals brokered after days of painstaking diplomatic negotiation. Joe sat down for 4 hours. 4 hours later, all the shit the teams had been trying to get him to sign off on, Xi Jinping said yes to. By the way, do you want to know what concessions we gave to China? Any idea? Any change in policy towards China? Anybody? That's right. Fire Resist 2 gets in there. There you go. Everybody's showing up in the chat room. Fucking nothing. Nothing. They got nothing. Because they need everything. They just need that business community to be okay with investing again. So they just have to give everything away and then trust that people are going to do it. The problem is, I don't know why anybody would. I don't know why, as a business person, you would invest in China. I don't mean because of xenophobia about the Chinese system, anti-communist sentiment, even disgruntled COVID shit. I don't know what the upside is. And I've been there. You guys know, I've been to China a lot. And I watched China take a turn for the worse over the last 20 years. The first time I went was in 2001. And it was lovely. And there was so much to do and see. And there was a slight tick down over the next decade. And then when she took over, it was just pow. It was like he grabbed the stick and just aimed the plane right at the earth. I don't get it. And that's why they have no leverage with fucking anybody. The only leverage they have is with Russia, who's in a worse economic state than they are. And by the way, if Russia hadn't picked this fight, if they hadn't picked this fight with Ukraine, this war, they would have been in a position to probably, how China's renaming parts of Russia's territory with the old Chinese names from before the Sino-Russian War, in a sign that they intend to reclaim those territories once Russia collapses and all that shit. The opposite could have been happening right now because of China's economic problems if Russia hadn't started this war in fucking Ukraine. That's how not only strategically moronic Xi Jinping is, and Vladimir Putin are, but this idea that they're both at the top of their game and sharp as a tack is beyond absurd. Anybody still arguing that, I don't know how they do it with a straight face. It's bizarre. Analysts say that Xi's concessions are tactical maneuvers designed to reduce tensions with the U.S. and buying Beijing time and space to repair its economy. Oh yeah? Do they now? We'll see what the analysts say. However, they don't signify a change in its strategic ambitions. Right, which is exactly why I don't know why a fucking business would set up shop in China. How stupid do they think? I mean, look, there are certain concessions you're willing to make if you can get something made cheaply, right? There's all right, we'll set up it's not like they're stealing tech on one of those monkeys with the symbols, or a minor level electronics or whatever. That it's secondhand shit and old tech anyways. We're making toys out of what used to be top of the line shit a few years ago. So if they steal it, no harm, no foul. And the cost of building it there, or fabricating it there, or more, because labor prices have actually gone up in China, ironically. More the issue with China is that they don't mind dirtying up their water and their air making this shit. So if we're looking for a place with enough workers that is willing to pollute its own water and air with a factory that makes this particularly pernicious piece of shit product that we have to do, refining of chemicals or what have you. Better to do it in China because they don't give a shit. That there are businesses that will write that off all over the world. There are also countries that are decades behind the U.S. and the West in terms of their technological advancements in phones and that kind of shit, where they're just barely above the calculator in the electronics available to them. Do they give a shit about making something their brand there? No. Thank you, CSL. I will be set up for our dear friend Texas Paul in just a moment. So the idea that they're like, we're being sneaky about this, we'll lure them in. I don't buy it because nobody's buying it. Cost of labor is now cheaper in Mexico than China, and you don't have to put all the shit on a boat. You can truck it up into the United States. It's way fucking cheaper. And that's, I mean, and the other thing is East Coast ports benefiting from European, especially Eastern European factories and the like. Yeah. Anyways, check this out. She returned empty-handed from the meeting regarding one of his core priorities, persuading Biden to overturn a ban on the sale of AI chips to China that the U.S. believes could be used to build weapons. You read that right. And Glenn Beck and his dipshit friends will all they give everything to China. Oh, China. They own China. Beijing, Biden, to China. And no. Discussions on the independence of Taiwan, which has long been among the main flashpoints of U.S.-China relations, were inconclusive because they don't want to give it up, and we're not going to say we're not going to back Taiwan. And with the Taiwanese presidential election approaching, tensions between Beijing and Washington are likely to continue ratcheting up. Though Xi is hoping for a short-term decrease in tensions, Chinese economic woes are unlikely to have altered his long-term calculations. I disagree. I think his long-term calculations, because the dude is not 30, for fuck's sake. This is that's why they're talking about the Japanification of China. That, like in 1990, 91, when Japan's economy took a giant shit and they're still technically recovering from it. And again, Japan had friends in the world. It hadn't made an enemy of every economic center on the fucking planet. The U.S. and the EU had reason to help Japan get through it. They have no reason to support China in this. None. And the foreign ministers surrounding Xi are assholes to everybody. In the middle of this. Yeah, Black Rain's a great movie, actually. I did enjoy that. It's good stuff. Anyways, chat room, hi. How are you? Good to see you. I gotta drag this down here and open up our window for Texas Paul, if I may. He'll be with us in just a moment. I'm going to close this guy too, because there's always something. Oh, wait, he's in the wings already. Hold on one second. Well, his screen is. I'll find him and punch him in here in a second. And I'm sure, and Lord knows we have plenty to talk about. And all this stuff. Let's go to our morning guest. There he is. He's settling in. We got plenty of time. Texas Paul's going to be joining us in about 5 minutes. And I'm going to go ahead and put the... Whoops. Cancel. Put this guy in here. And I'll pop him in so we can do that. And I'll be ready to go with him in just a moment. So he's getting set up and it's all good. And we'll have to talk. I'm sure that Texas Paul has read Unwoke, Ted Cruz's new book, which is a fascinating read. And we saw basically a half-assed ad for it on Greg Kelly's show last night, trying to pass for a regular segment. As I guess Ted Cruz looks down the barrel of getting, losing his job in the Senate and eventually having to do something else afterwards. And nobody's going to want him as a lobbyist. So he's hoping that I guess he can continue to sell bullshit anti-woke books till he, fades off into the distance, or somebody gives him a job, like takes his podcast and puts it on, on some network someplace. So, by the way, just in case, before I bring him on, Sunday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 8 a.m. Pacific time, our dear friend Texas Paul has Coffee with Texas Paul as his regular show on twitch.tv/Real Texas Paul. I think I'm getting that right. And realtexaspaul.com will have the links if you get lost in any way. And I must say that I think he got a new beard trim today. Like he got it shaped or something like that, because it's looking particularly fine today. As a matter of fact, I can't wait to bring him on. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Texas Paul. I'm not hearing you, so fire my way. Let's see. You're muted for some reason. Yeah.
See you, my friend.
There you go. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much, Texas Paul. Everybody, give it up for Texas Paul. Texas Paul, yeah. Texas Paul, all right. So welcome. Welcome to the show. Lots to talk about. Obviously, you and I have not really had a chance to dig into we dug into the Israel-Hamas thing the last time we spoke. We didn't get to talk a ton about Ukraine and stuff, but there's been so much kind of regular domestic politics that I think would be a lot more fun to discuss with you. Because God knows we have enough, wailing and gnashing of teeth these days when it comes to what's going on in the rest of the world. I was just, I don't know if you saw, but I was just reiterating this. I was reading the story in Business Insider about, Xi Jinping basically coming hat in hand, Biden getting everything he asked for, with the exception of the Taiwan thing, which is going to be a draw anyways, because it's the one pawn that Xi Jinping can't afford to be seen giving up. Even if he did it for real, even if he actually did it, and said, we're not going to attack. Even if he told them, just don't say I'm not going to attack, otherwise they'll behead me, essentially. There's a possibility that happened, but they're not going to talk about it. But everything else, and he didn't get any concessions in technology. Basically, Biden told him, nope, you're not getting any of the high tech from the United States anytime soon. And we view the technology as so dangerous and such a, the world is such a tipping point technologically. We don't trust you guys at all with this stuff. So,
I love you,
yeah,
brother. And it is all so relevant what you're talking about. But I don't care. I don't care. We got pandas, man. We got pandas.
That's right. We're getting our pandas back. We're getting a couple of pandas. And of course, we need, I don't know if you know this, but there's experts in animal husbandry that have been working for years to get enough panda semen to use as a binding agent for paper to make fake ballots so that Democrats can win in 2024. So USA. Yeah.
I wonder, and you will know better than me. You know this region better than I love to keep track because it's so important. But I wonder if Z's position isn't also, I mean, of course, we've just found out that everything we thought was a disaster with Country Garden, they're facing it like 20 times that scale.
Right.
That's come out. But I wonder if also Russia is now sliding into hyperinflation.
Yes.
They had inflation before, but they had demand for their goods. Because of President Biden's effectiveness in
sanctions,
tamping down all the cheating,
all that stuff.
Sanctions. Yep. But now they have no demand and inflation. This is disastrous for Russia. I mean, this is signaling the end. This is the smoke, pop and smoke. We're screwed.
Yeah.
Just like it collapsed last time, it's happening again. You're talking this time next year. There may not be a Russian Federation as we know it. I wonder if that's not driving Xi.
Yeah, well, he met with, the last time he met with Vladimir Putin, there, again, he flew back and they immediately changed the maps. That was the big story last time about, and that, like I said, that seems like a minor thing to us in the United States. Like because we're so big. We're so fucking gigantic as a country and an economy and as a powerhouse militarily that if Mexico just decided to like claim Texas for Spain, we'd go, that's adorable. Right? We would like it, you know what I mean? It would be seen as kind of like a fuck you, but we wouldn't care. This scared the living shit out of the Russians because China's basically betting now on Russia's collapse. And when it happens, dibs, that's basically what they're saying. We want dibs on this section north on the like northwest of Kazakhstan or northeast of Kazakhstan. That whole area, we want that area. We want it's oil rich,
Going
it's
right into the
resource rich.
Caspian oil fields.
That's right.
Philip and I had a great discussion about that. They're like, oh, you know, all the Republicans are like, they're going to attack Taiwan. I said, no, they're not. They're wrong direction. They're not going east. They're going west because there's big money in the west. Big money in the west.
They're gonna they move west when this falls apart. There may be a pop off gunfight and 3 people get shot in the process of them taking over huge swaths of land they lost in the China-Russo War decades ago, over 100 years ago, almost now. Yeah, 1920, whatever. Anyways, Taiwan.
And look at Mongolia.
Yeah, they attack Taiwan.
Look at Mongolia, man.
They lose 1 million people during the initial attack. That's what's going to happen to China. Like, you think Russia's losses are bad? Try doing that shit crossing water. Like it's absurd. Like, and they know it. And they know it. That's why they always talk about it and never do it. It's the same thing with like Republicans, like pro-business Republicans threatening to shut down the government with any permanence or not raise the debt ceiling with any permanence. Everybody knows it's a fucking bluff because they are owned essentially by the corporate structure behind them, and they know fuck, Tesla wouldn't exist without government subsidies. SpaceX doesn't exist. There is no Elon Musk without government contracts. And he still, that's the primary guaranteed income that he has. That's true of a swath of industries, like a huge swath of the industries. So of course the Republicans aren't going to.
Another red flag for me was Ulcik in Mongolia. I was bringing that up a second ago.
Yep.
Mongolia's always loved sticking their thumb in China's eye. Mm-hmm. They've always, Russia's got our back. You know, what are you going to do, man? What are you going to do? And now Ulcik's like, buddy.
Yeah.
How you doing, my man?
Yep.
Remember us? We have shared heritage. You know,
that's right.
I mean, it's,
yeah,
you know,
because your hordes raped all of us. What do you mean shared heritage? Yes, because Genghis Khan's DNA is in 11 million fucking people. Shared heritage. Get the fuck out of here.
Okay, they may be right about me. I just laughed at genocide and rape. My God, what a horrible! I'm going to hell. I'm going to hell.
Didn't. You laughed at the absurdity of these people using a phrase like shared heritage to describe genocide and rape.
True.
That's what's funny about
Absolutely.
that. If you have to explain the joke, it's because your mom is watching, not because it's not funny. But honest to God, you're absolutely right. And the Mongolians are sort of trapped between China and North Korea. North Korea is the one, that's also another factor. North Korea has been a bit of a fuck you to China as well, and been this like, you know, this loose cannon that they can kind of marginally use at times to pressure Japan and the United States, but mostly its alignment is with Russia. The China and it's grown over time. If Russia fails, this is a cascade. The entire, you know, they're talking about a new world order. That's what happens. The new world order after that situation is democracies around the world no longer have their primary enemy because they're punching each other in the dick, and there's no end in sight for that. I talked yesterday a little bit about what's going on in Sudan and South Sudan and Darfur right now, and it's fucking horrifying. And the news is just breezing past it or whatever. But let me tell you something. When Russia falls, that's what all of that area looks like. That's the sectarian violence between the Kazakhs and the fucking Dagestanis and the Chechens who've had enough of this shit or want to overthrow the Russian Orthodox Church finally and seize these buildings that look like they're from Islam anyways, and all that stuff, that bottled up bullshit that is only it's the diplomacy of Russia is a Mexican standoff. It is honestly like all day, every day with their allies and friends, just fucking settle, sit. Like that's it. And they take their eye off one person and it goes. If they aren't able, you stand there long enough, your arms start to get shaky. Holding those guns for this long has been a pain in the ass. And if it falls, that's what happens because everyone around them gets another bite at this apple and none of them buys the bullshit, the kumbaya nonsense they were selling in the early 90s, which turned out to be a fucking rope-a-dope. And the Chinese want they would love that. You're absolutely right. They would rather have the Mongolian territories and the stuff they lost to Russia and more, everything right up to the permafrost. They want basically everything shy of the permafrost. They'll take.
Oh, I believe
rather than
that,
Taiwan.
That's why you've got Georgia right now is like, "Hey, America, our
Yep.
friends, remember us? We used to be best buddies about a half a
Mm-hmm.
century ago. I missed you guys because what are you looking at? You're looking at freaking China staring across the Caspian Sea from the other bank going, hi.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole region is rethinking its whole we love Mother Russia bullshit. I mean, it really
Mhm.
is. They are 100%. I am so glad Joe Biden is our president right now. I
Seriously.
cannot stress to you enough how important it is to have somebody that actually can go to a map and knows where Azerbaijan is, knows
Right.
what, the
The history of the
Atsak,
conflict.
the Atsak region, the history of that. And I put a post out yesterday on social media. Brace yourself. We're about to have tons of experts on the the Azerbaijani and
Armenian
Armenian
conflict. Yeah.
histories. Yeah,
Yeah.
people that never knew what Atsak was are going to suddenly be social political experts
Right.
in the region and down in the Caucasus. It was like,
Dude,
no,
yeah.
no.
I brought up the other day that Russia came down for Putin came down for this meeting in Kazakhstan, which is again, there's so much turmoil about that. The fact that they sent in these troops ahead of their attack on Ukraine into Kazakhstan to basically tamp down that particular leader because they thought he was playing too much footsie with Europe and ended up installing a guy who is ethnically closer to being Chinese and like a Kazakh Chinese, like kind of Turkish background than Russia. I mean, you look at the guy and you could tell he's not a guy who walks around the streets of Moscow and fits in. They would look at him as a foreigner, and he knows it, and they know it. And when Putin came down there, the president of Kazakhstan did his remarks in Kazakh. Normally they do it in Russian, and he fucking did it in Kazakh with Putin sitting right the fuck there, and everybody like Lavrov and all those guys were sitting in the front row, embarrassed. And again, in the West, we expect this. We're not upset by this shit. That's cool. When the Mexican president or Macron or anybody comes in, they might say a couple of words in English to the president back and forth, but their remarks are in their language. You know why? Because America doesn't show up on anybody's 23andMe, and we don't give a fuck what language you speak as long as you're cool with our Constitution. That's the primary gathering point. It isn't your background and your creed. It's whether or not you believe in the rule of law and the essential ideas of democracy. Outside that, you can dick around all you want as long as your religion ends at the tip of your nose and you don't try to impose your version of law from your old country on somebody here when it doesn't apply. It's pretty easy. That's not how it runs almost anywhere else outside of Western countries, certainly, but not outside the United States. And so if we don't care. We're good. We have French speakers and Arabic speakers and Persians and fucking Chinese dissidents and all kinds of people living here speaking their native language and English, and it's cool. But that's a pissing contest in Russia that all these satellite states, which had their own cultures, had their own people, had their own industries and stuff, and were gobbled up by the Soviet Union and had Russian forced on them the same way China has forced Mandarin, the northeastern language, on the entirety of China when there are 7 solid languages all across that, and some of them not even, Asian languages. I mean, near Asian, I would argue, like Kazakh's a lot closer to Turkish or Russian as far as a language, but
Mhm,
it's nowhere near Chinese, and it's written in Cyrillic. It's not written in pictograms. So, like,
mhm.
it's hilarious to me watching these dickheads get pantsed, and I don't think we appreciate it in the West as much as the rest of the world does. Going, because there's always, you can see that GIF of everybody going, "Oh shit," like that, right?
You know,
Every time, yeah,
and to bring it back home,
yeah,
all these people, how over the last decade that were like, "Oh, America's over. The next
right,
century's China's century. You gotta
right,
get you in some country garden. You gotta get some
mm-hmm,
investments in China. You gotta do it,
mm-hmm.
man. That's the future." And I was like, "No,
No,
no,
I look, I
no."
I'm as a Sinophile and as somebody who speaks Chinese and loves Chinese culture. Not only was I did I watch the downfall of China in practically real time over the last 2 decades in my travels there. Like, I literally, every time I would come back, I'd go, "Oh fuck, it's worse." Every time. But at the same time, I would also watch the death of Chinese culture. And the irony is that China, through TikTok and other sources, has been attacking uh, Western values, Western concepts, and they attack it all the time. So a lot of times you'll hear people who are hate America on one side or hate things like the FBI and shit like that. They're all getting their same dumbass talking points from the same conduit, and it's usually out of Russia or China. These are the primary ways they get it, through TikTok or some fake Facebook group that the Apartment 29 is running, or any of these groups. Meanwhile, it's really happening in China. Like, they are dismantling, they have since the Cultural Revolution. They kind of brought it back a little bit, kind of the veneer of Chinese culture, but they are actively destroying it. Russian culture, what the fuck is Russian culture anymore? I mean, it exists and there's remnants of it, kind of like the columns of Greece. Just, you could see what it used to look like, but it's all a farce. You know what I mean? I've
Yeah,
said that,
you
like,
spent a century trying to erase it, and then I mean,
yeah,
it's like an entire century dedicated but from the Russian people to try to erase Russian history. I mean, it was
right.
the Soviets were amazing to watch. I mean,
Yeah,
it'd be like Americans trying to say, "Fuck George Washington." I mean,
right,
it would be it was the
right.
I mean, it was that bad. I mean, people don't realize all the craziness that we've watched over the last century and how it's really just all coming home to roost, man.
Hmm.
And it is
Well,
just beautiful to watch.
it's a curious thing, because there was definitely, and it was during Trump, because he played it up and he wanted to make it look like it was a bigger thing, with like, remove Lincoln, remove Jefferson, remove George Washington. They're going to tear down these statues of these people, or whatever. And some of it happened in Europe a little bit. They had a couple of moments of this, and it's the same kind of like easily hypnotized hyper left or libertarian anarchists or whatever, who can find strange bedfellows and just tear down the old and build up this. We don't need any structures at all, so any symbol of the structure that we're in needs to be destroyed. And so they bonded together in some of those things, but ultimately it failed. And what it mutated into in the United States was the eradication of Confederate statues. That it did basically end there. That it was really about, why is the losing side still have pieces on the board?
Mhm.
Why do we have monuments to their success in their failure at trying to destroy the system everybody comfortably lives in right now, whether they think they're comfortable or not, compared to, again, what's happening in Sudan and Chad and all that kind of stuff? You have no idea. And certainly the divisions in our politics don't look anything like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict across what's effectively, no thicker than a state line between, a northern state and a southern state, or the dividing line in the middle of Kentucky that existed during the Civil War. So, like, we don't even fucking know compared to that stuff. But what
You
happened
can't
was,
You can't ask
Yeah.
that question enough though, Hal. I mean, you hit it right on the head, brother. You always just cut through the bullshit and nail it. You
Mm.
have a government that was not the United States of America, that
Mhm.
existed for less time than the boy band NSYNC did, that
Ooh, shots
still
fired.
has monuments to its leaders in
Right.
our country.
On American soil.
In our
Right.
country. You know,
Yeah.
not their country because they wanted a whole nother country.
They
That's
had
not
a
American culture.
they had a confederacy. They had a constitution of the Confederacy. They specifically codifying slavery in it as a permanent state, codifying the ownership of slaves and the number of people. And this is, again, there's all this 3/5 of a human being bullshit that people talk about in the mitigation between slave states and non-slave states, and how people talk about it in kind of broad strokes or whatever. The reason it was 3/5 of a person was because the South wanted to count their slaves as people because they're human beings, and not give them a vote, though. So they want to, we have a bunch of people, but we don't let them vote. And the North said, we don't want to say they're not people, but since you're not allowing them to vote, they don't count as for your representation. They don't count as a whole person, because while they are a whole human being, you don't let them have any rights. So you don't get to count. Slaves are only counted as 3/5 of a person because they only got 3/5 of the inalienable rights that we're codifying in this fucking document. So if they had said slaves are a whole person, native slaves are a whole person, or native tribes intermingling with the southern states, who, by the way, including the Cherokees, still had slaves at that point. Slaves, native tribes still had slaves 10 years after the Civil War. If they were allowed to count those people as full human beings, there would still be slavery in the United States. The 3/5 of a person thing was literally a move to end slavery. It was mitigatory. So most people know that. If you studied any history, that little detail that people hammer is just fucking idiotic. It drives me crazy when
Mhm.
people bring it up. But the point is that Trump's slippery slope. They're going to tear down all the great statues of Lincoln and blah, 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 blah. What he means is there's never going to be a statue of Donald Trump anywhere that matters. And he's afraid that he will be effectively the modern version of a Confederate leader. That when somebody puts it up, somebody will go, this motherfucker tried to engage in an insurrection to take down our government. Why is there a statue of this dude? It's just like replacing Robert E. Lee with a statue of Donald Trump. It's the same fucking piece on the board. And you fucking
I
lost.
promise you, I promise you, I will be arrested for what I do to any statue of Donald Trump, any municipality, any state, anybody erects to that son of a bitch in our country. I will shit on that statue. I
Mhm.
promise you,
Yeah,
I will be in jail for it because I will do it over and over and
right.
over again. The
I there is a slight chance that the first statue of him will actually it will actually be made of shit. So, kind of like the Big Butter statue. You know what I mean? Like that's the next one in line. And somebody said, explain the 3/5 is mitigatory. I just did. That's exactly why it's mitigatory. That's why it was they met the South more than halfway, because the Northerners believed that that African slaves were human beings. So that's why 3/5 instead of 2/5. That was considered a win for the politics of the South, because they were like, we get to count them as for population as 3/5 of a person in our census. But in the North, it was we moved towards them being a whole person. That was the line that they chose. That's why it ended up being 3/5. Does that make sense? Instead of two
I got to
fifths.
tell you, it's a little personal for me. Born
Mm-hmm.
and raised in Texas. You get fed this shit as a kid, that
Right.
whole lost cause nonsense, and
Right.
you get
South will
y
rise
people talk
again.
about people talk about Robert E. Lee like he was a great general or something, and then you grow up, and then you look around and you learned it's bullshit. It
Yep.
is bullshit. You feel so violated, you feel so betrayed. I mean, I remember standing in Gettysburg on the Gettysburg battlefield looking around, and I'd already known that the only major battles that Lee won, he was on the defensive on his home ground. I
Right.
mean, he was not a brilliant general. He was not an effective general. But
No.
I looked at the battlefield of Gettysburg, man, And I was like, "You've got to be the biggest fricking moron in the world."
Mhm.
I have no military training whatsoever, but I know that side loses, this side wins. It's
Mhm.
600 yards from the end of this line to that line. I can move cannons, troops,
Yep.
material, ammunition. I can move it in under 5 minutes. I can shift my entire line.
Right.
They had 6 miles of
Mhm.
lines that they had to move forces and spread out among there. Robert E. Lee was the biggest moron of a
Mhm.
general, and still to this day, you get people that are
Right.
educated that will still to this day will talk about Robert E. Lee like he was some sort of freaking, and I feel it's so personal for me because it's just the shit that you're told as a young
Mhm.
person that you have to overcome when you get older. And that's why, and I'll be honest with you, this propaganda, they're trying so hard to hold on to this down here.
Sure.
They
Well, I
are,
mean,
they are
that's
fighting it.
that is it's interesting. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene, it seems like she's given up on almost every main cause. Like she'll blather about pro-life, but she's not dug in on it. She'll blather about fiscal responsibility or whatever bullshit she was telling her constituents, like, that Chip Roy is now screaming about, but she doesn't really go in on it. She throws these impeachments up or tries to drive somebody's salary down to $1, but they're just kind of these flailing legislative waffing bullshit. But what she does get dug in on, and it seems is really personal to her, is the Robert E. Lee statue thing. Like on her Telegram channel, that was the thing that she wrote more personal posts on, when, as they were melting it down and as it was being taken down and stuff. That drove her fucking crazy. And she's like, they're erasing our heritage. Like, you didn't have a heritage, fucker. The
Whose
United
heritage?
States of
Whose
America.
heritage? That was
Right.
never my heritage. I
Right.
was born in South Texas. That's in the United States of America.
That
I was
goddamn right.
never a part of the fricking Confederacy. That is
Hmm.
not my heritage.
Right.
Those are
Yeah.
fricking traitors is who that was.
Well, they're using the
Horrific
fucking
human
as
beings
their
that wanted to own other human beings. Screw those people.
right, and they were using the effectively the British naval jack as their flag. That's, the Confederate flag is
Stars and
based on
bars,
the
yeah.
is based on the naval flag of the like King George's army. Essentially, is a reminder that, like, we want to go back to a different form of government. You can argue that there was a thread of anti-colonial monarchists during the Revolutionary War. And look at the conflict between Israel and Palestine. Look at the conflicts that were going on over these worlds, and these things rattle on for decades. And 100 years later, people paint a fabricated picture of who was really on the good side and who was really on the bad side. And you'll notice, and this has a lot to do with the South versus the North. They'll always talk about how the North, like the winner, always writes the history of it, which is only partially true. Because what you'll have a lot of times is, in modern times, the loser will have an oral history. The winners will have to write the good, the bad, and the ugly. And multiple books have been written about the Civil War from effectively after the North has won, after the United States beat this slave confederacy that tried to take over the government. Because I don't even know why we talk about it in terms of North and South, except for the direction wasn't the point. It was the political ideology behind it. But the North wrote all the books, and all the Northerners afterwards had the publishing houses that published the books that were apologistic for what the Southerners did. That said, most of the stories you're talking about, that Daughters of the American Confederacy and all that shit, is all an
Ooh,
oral
that's a
history. They sit
horrible,
around,
yeah.
yeah, they sit and spin yarns about this shit. Well, you'll notice that one of the reasons why certain groups will insist on oral histories is because you never hear a bad oral history of your people. Nobody,
Yeah.
generation after generation, sits around the campfire going, we were a bunch of Nazi fucks. We tried to kill these people. Your great great granddad was a masterful rapist and a horrible man. He was beat to death by your great great grandmother while they were both drunk. And I'm surprised you survived, the way I've treated you. Like, it's silly. Like, most oral traditions have this, fallback of like a giant bird landed on the earth and our people just fell out of its bosom, and we've been just shuffling around trying to grow some food for a while, and then these mean people came in and tried to kill us, and we fought them off, and that's why there's only 8 of us. That's how, honest to God, that's how most of the and not just here, not just in the North America, South America, the Canadian territories, the fucking old Irish Viking stories. Like, go back to any area before they started writing shit down, and it's always a shining story about your people as victims and heroes. And that's exactly what Marge Green is doing. It's all about the Republicans are now, they don't want to write anything down, no legislation. They just want to sit around the campfire and spin bullshit fucking yarns about how they were always the victim and the hero at the same time.
Yep.
Ugh. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to bring up was, among other things, is to your point about Russia being in difficult straits. The ex-commander who was just deposed or whatever, the 6th Army of the Russian Air Force, Vladimir Sviridov. Yeah, he was found dead in a private house in Russia. He was the guy who was in charge of upgrading the air defense systems and procuring it, which means he was the guy who was stealing from it and shuffling all the parts off or selling it to other people, or like basically involved in the black market arms trade of stolen Russian shit. And
actually,
another guy with gravity poisoning. Yeah,
this guy actually publicly came out and said, "This shit is too freaking corrupt. We can't. We don't have a real Air Force anymore.
Right.
Half our shit doesn't fly because we're not doing maintenance on anything. The Putin government has to be reformed." That's what he said. That's what got him killed. Right.
Yeah.
There.
It was by the way, it was a gas leak too. He died of a gas leak in his fucking house. All right, carbon dioxide, I'll give you, because people fall asleep and the window's closed and it's comforting and blah, blah, blah. I guarantee every window in that fucking house is nailed shut from the outside.
I love, same people that were telling us that we had to invest in China, and this was China's century, are the same people that were telling us that Russia's military was this juggernaut and we had to be scared of it and this, that, and the other, when the entire Russian military, everybody that has a brain, everybody that looks around and says, man, we got to fix this. I mean, we really do got to. Too much stealing is going on, ends up dead.
Yeah. I mean, they're jacking these guys up. They're jacking these guys up with fucking Pervitin. The equivalent of it. They're basically jacking them up with meth at this point. There's this story that came out also that one of the reasons, like, some guys surrendered essentially, and they're like, we tried to talk our other guys into surrender, but they're out of their minds on drugs, and they beat one guy to death, one of their own to death, for giving drugs to essentially laced with fentanyl to his fellow soldiers and it wasn't the problem that he was giving them all this meth and stuff. It's just some of it was laced with fentanyl and they all got poisoned and died because of the Chinese source of the drugs. It's so fucking and that's the Avdiivka guys. Those are the guys charging in Avdiivka. They're gacking them up on meth, which is just what the fucking Nazis did.
You can buy the Russian candy bars on the black market. That are so full of freaking meth, man. You eat one of these freaking candy bars, dude.
Jesus.
And you're like,
right? Yeah. Yeah. Everybody, all the Russian soldiers turn into Bobcat Goldthwait. Like, thank you very much. I'm facing the wrong way. Yeah. So the other aspect of it,
I can just picture Bobcat Goldthwait jumping out of a foxhole.
Yeah, right. Stop shooting! I'm trying to take a nap. I'm a vegetarian. So, yeah, I love him. I can't. Once I start, I can't stop, and then I lose my singing voice for a month. But
speaking of which, I'm pissed at you.
Why? What'd I do?
You told me you were gonna let me know when you were coming down to Dallas. We were gonna hook up. I was looking forward. I've been waiting to get down there. Next thing you know, I get all these people, "Hey, man, the Dallas show was great, dude. It was amazing. Why weren't you there?"
We're no for
Fuck, man.
we talked after that because I'm coming in for New Year's. I'm doing Dallas New Year's. So I
Mm,
will, yeah.
mm.
So that we're doing So we're doing the
I was
Gaylord, I
butthurt as
think.
hell, dude. I really was.
Dude, I yeah, no, that was right after because I didn't know where in Texas specifically you were. I think we had the conversation afterwards. But yeah, it's New Year's.
I am I am where you are, brother. I am looking forward to that show.
Yes, me too. It's going to be a great time, and we need it. And it's the reason I do Nerd Halen is because we need stupid fun very often these days, especially. So I talk about like the AI stuff, and it translated into the Xi Jinping stuff as well. But one of the other things that was lost in that is Biden and Blinken meeting with all these other APEC countries and effectively creating a sideline TPP. The Trans-Pacific Partnership was designed, and I unfortunately, because of, I would argue on the Democratic side, what was effectively the Bernie clamoring during 2016, Hillary had to backtrack away from TPP and not support it to try it because she thought it was a winning issue. It wasn't. It's fucking dumb. But she didn't know enough about it or didn't want to explain it or didn't feel like the voters did or there was a powerful enough contingent that was just anti-trade deal enough. Like, this is going to be more jobs shipping overseas, that kind of thing, which is, it literally was a bulwark against China's hegemony and industrial strength in the South China Sea and the very PowerPoint that China has over all these other countries, the Philippines, South Korea, Japan, Indonesia, Thailand, the Vietnam, all those areas which they've been stomping this whole fucking time, choking off the trade routes in the South China Sea. This was meant to lift them up. Trump, of course, kills the deal, and then magically $17 million shows up in his stupid fake Chinese bank account, and nobody puts that shit together but me. The timing of
Yeah,
that,
I just
yeah,
the stupidity around that was just insane. I mean,
yeah,
everybody, "You can't do it. It's another NAFTA. It's another," people that know nothing about economics suddenly turn into economics professors,
yeah. Well, that's a constant
and just the
issue,
basic politics of ceding to China, the largest trade organization on the planet, and
right?
saying, we're not gonna be involved, go ahead, man." That was the stupidest damn thing I have seen in
Mm-hmm.
forever, and you're right, that was what I was taking away. Everybody was like, "Oh, Biden's in, at APEC, this, that, and the other, da, 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 da." The stuff
Mm-mm.
he walked out of there with, I
Yep.
was like, "Damn, did he just, like, shadow sign the TPP agreement or something, man?" I mean,
Yeah.
'cause
Well, they
that
set
is
up when Biden came in, they set up this like it's got a much longer name than Trans-Pacific Partnership, but this like Southeast Asian business cooperative uh, you know
I
organization
thought it
of
was
blah. It was like blah,
CSAC
blah, blah.
or something like
Yeah,
that,
right.
yeah.
It's totally went on forever, and that's effectively what it was. It was just without the power of multilateral or effectively bilateral negotiations, meaning those countries as one block, us as the other block. That's what TPP was effectively like. We'll organize with these guys because none of them have enough strength on their own, and so you bind them together, make them feel like they have a balance point, and we're not trying to screw them. And then there's a tete-a-tete that can happen. If you try to go in and if we bilateral with the fucking Vietnamese or the Philippines or any of these guys, they're going to get walked on because they need our market so bad and we don't need shit from them. And that's what's happening to China. They're afraid they're going to turn into China. And so the idea was like, no, we don't want to fuck you out of all this because it doesn't help us if you guys turn into a bunch of poor refugees and storm into another country because you're fucking broke. There's nothing in it for the United States from a business standpoint or from a world standpoint. We don't need to police the South China Seas. As a matter of fact, we just want to make sure the trade routes don't get gacked up. It's the same
Yeah.
people who talk about like, and I don't know if you've reflected on this lately. It wouldn't surprise me, but the people who are like, war is a racket. War is the big moneymaker, and that's why we can never get out of wars. And you're like, do you have any idea what the peace dividend on technology is these days? It's a fucking
Yeah.
drag for most of these countries, these companies, that make this stuff. The only reason they make it and test it is so that the lens can end up in your iPhone. Like the rest of the shit they can make is so much fucking easier. Trade deals and business deals are way easier than fucking
Oh, yeah.
raising fucking villages. And
Oh, yeah.
and the idea though that there's this weird thing where people are like, they don't care, they don't mind, they don't and they don't care, whatever. I'm sure there are evil sociopathic assholes in the world. Most of them live in Dubai these days that operate on that level. You don't know any
Yeah.
of them, and I don't know any of them, and neither does any of the people who are saying this shit. You know?
Actually, I wanted to ask you something, man, because you're
Yeah.
so up on what's going on in China, and I have actually been losing this is something I'm losing sleep over.
Mm-hmm.
I never want to see an unstable China. I don't. That's just
Right.
something in the world that is a house fire nobody should ever want. And I am seeing in China the absolute if you
Right.
had to build a revolution, if you had to build instability within a country,
Yep.
everything that's happening in China right now, the cost of labor is going up because inflation
Mm-hmm.
is going up. I mean,
Youth
they've
youth
got a
unemployment is like
huge economic crisis. They've got an
37%.
entire younger population that are sitting around twiddling their damn thumbs that are
Mm-hmm.
highly educated, that are
Mm-hmm.
not partaking in any of the economic
Yeah, they call it lying
largesse at
flat.
all.
There's a thing.
Yeah.
For people who don't know, there's a trend in China called lying flat, which is the idea that the world doesn't need me. I don't. I can't get a job for what I trained for in school, so I'm just going to lay in bed all day, lying flat. That's what it is, and that's like it became literally the Chinese government had to take the lying flat hashtag off of social media because it was causing this effectively it's like a general strike amongst the youth
Mhm.
who, including the ones that were employed. It's fucked up. Here's why I'll settle you down a little bit about this though. One of the reasons why the country is not ripe for the kind of revolution you'll see in other places, why African nations are in a worse position than say Chinese nations, is the age of the population. Effectively, the revolutionaries in China are too old for this shit. And the youngins are too like they're too nihilistic to go for it. None of them are care enough about anything past the end of this street. They might rise up if the government came and tried to put them down, and there would be the natural self-preservation activity of a group of people. But beyond that, they have no idea what the fuck they want. They have no idea. There is no
I was just
movement.
worried.
Yeah.
I was just worried because, like, what you're seeing here in the United States, you got a bunch of people that weren't even a gleam in their daddy's eye in the last time we saw a major terrorist attack
Right.
in this country. Yeah, I mean, they were literally not even a gleam in their daddy's eye. And folks, if you don't know what that means, go ask your mama; she'll explain it.
Right. She'll explain it.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that are now. I mean, you've got people on TikTok talking about, well, Bin Laden had a point. I mean, it's just
Oh yeah.
in this
They've been
country, and I
no,
worry
they've been
about that
yeah,
in
they've been
China as well.
yeah, they've been floating that around. And it'll be a bump and a ruffle in the internet. I'm not worried about that stuff. It happens all the time on the regular on TikTok, and that's something that China runs TikTok. I mean, ByteDance and Douyin, it's a strategy. The algorithm on TikTok is designed to decimate societies. That's what it's built to do. Everywhere else, and the way you can tell is all the stuff that gets thrown into your feed on TikTok is not allowed on Douyin in China. On the Chinese version of TikTok, all of that stuff is not allowed. The algorithm itself is not allowed. They have a different algorithm for inside China, so that you don't.
I tell
So
you, it
that
works, man. I'm in love with Mandarin Megan.
well, that's the other goal. They had the pretty girls teaching Chinese, and then they start throwing down political shit. That was one of the baits that Russia and Apartment 29 and their Macedonian hacker groups and all that shit, setting up those fake Facebook groups. If you look back, and even Twitter accounts, if you look back, a lot of cat video sites, a lot of like cute trivia sites, all of a sudden, right around the election, go bam, Biden's a communist, he's got to be taken down, and blah blah. Like they all went that way, because that's what they are. they only can gain ground or build a following through bullshit, and then that's, I mean, you set a trap and you snare it, and you won't get everybody, but it'll show up in their feed. They won't know why, but they'll just think it's organically in their feed. They didn't look for it, but they subscribed to this cat video site a while back, and now all of a sudden you're getting all this stuff about how Hunter Biden's in bed with the Chinese and blah blah blah. And that's where it came from. That's how it ended up on their phone. They don't make the connection like, oh, I got suckered by this fucking fake cat video site that was, showed me something I liked until it
Cats
needed to show
work,
me something
man.
else.
I tell you, I was saying that about Ukraine. That was the most brilliant move I've ever seen as
Mm-hmm.
far as the psyops are concerned. Everybody does it. People are like, "Oh, TikTok, China is trying to influence."
Yeah.
Everybody does it. You think the Ukrainians really roll around with their cat in their little vest and their, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? No, man, that's for you, guy. That's for you because
Right.
cats work. People freaking love cats.
Cats. That's right. I mean,
Yeah,
so
and and I
that
gotta
yeah.
give
Go
I
ahead.
gotta give China this, man. Mandarin Megan and her clones, that
Mm-hmm.
was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
That was brilliant. You got this very soft-spoken, polite, smiling, upbeat young lady telling you, "Hey, you know how to tell people to screw off in Chinese? Let me
Yeah.
teach you that." Yeah,
Chunida.
I mean
That's how you
that
that's how you say it. Chunida, which means, interestingly enough, like it's just like like Chinese swear words. It's so like 1950s in its own way that it's not really actually dirty. It's go to your place. The way you say piss off is like go to your home. Chunida, go to yours, which is just like your nida jia, your house. But they drop the ja and just go chunida. And it's like, ouch. Easy there, champ. One of the biggest insults is bendan or humbert. And bendan literally means rotten egg. And like old egg, meaning your brain, it's how they say the R word in China, that your brain is rotten, that your head is full of rotten eggs, and therefore an ow, easy. That's terrible. That's right. I mean, they've updated and they have some, they've copied some Western ones, some standard motherfuckers and whatnot, but they're direct translations of it, and nobody uses them because they're embarrassed to say them most of the time, and certainly nobody says them in public. They'll do them online, but it's like the online cowards. I'm sure you deal with it. They'll say all kinds of shit, and then they meet you in public, like, yeah, no, I just thought it was unfair what you were your premise that you were, like, all right, yeah.
I have seen that before. I have seen that before in a parking lot at a Sam's Club. The guy, "Are you Texas, Paul? Are you Texas?" "Yeah, yeah, I am." And he didn't know what to say after that.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell he was not pleased to meet me, but
Right.
he just, "Okay."
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Fine. Then be that way.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to talk to you about Mike Johnson in the last little bit.
I don't wanna talk about your Johnson, man.
No, not my Johnson, Mike Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We'll talk about Michael Hunt later. But the yeah, but like I don't know that we've had a chance to speak since that whole kerfuffle. Thoughts?
Since Preacher Johnson came around, no, we haven't.
Mm, yeah. Your thoughts on him and and how they got rolled?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that last vote on the debt ceiling. I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh, man." And what did he do? Exactly what McCarthy did. Exactly what McCarthy did.
Hmm.
Actually, the vote was actually worse. They had even more of the Freedom Caucus vote, against
The
raising the debt
CR,
ceiling, and
yeah.
Mike John yeah, the
Hmm.
continuing resolution, they were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, no, 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 no." And Mike Johnson's like, "What you gonna do?" It's what we got to do, man. I told everybody that you're going to see nothing out of the Republicans. You cannot run that caucus. There's no way to
Nope.
reconcile those people together. And it's damn sure not with this freak. Damn sure
Right.
not with this freak. I
Well,
mean, he,
I talked about how like the reason we have an omnibus is specifically because if you let somebody vote on what they like, they're never going to vote on what you want. And so no party in a negotiation would go, "Oh, okay, so we'll separate this into several things. We'll vote on what you want first, and then we'll vote on what I want next." And then count on you to keep your word to vote legitimately on stuff after, like, of course not. They're gonna vote on border security. They're gonna vote on the DOD. They're gonna vote on, and then they're gonna try and kill Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, or the Department of Education, or the Department of Justice, or FBI funding. Of course. So that's why you have an omnibus. So everybody has to take their fucking medicine at the same time. Right? Everybody's got to get in a fucking circle, and we're all on three, and that's they try to do this shuffle. I don't know if you heard this, but they try to do these the two versions, the group 1 and group 2 of basically the bills into two little mini buses, right? Short buses, as it were. And the House Freedom Caucus had put all their favorite shit in the first one that would go in January, and put all the stuff they wanted to vote against in the February one. And they were like, we forgot this shit, man. And they, and they give it to Mike Johnson, and they, roll through. And a draft proposal had a different version of Group 1 and Group 2, which was a mix, an even mix, where the Department of Education and the Farm Bill were paired together, and the ongoing funding for the Department of Justice and military funding was partnered together, and the VA and all stuff. Like they basically was a half and half, two mini buses that were even. So if you want your shit, you got to vote for the other shit. Neither of these, just because it's not one big giant one, it's two of the same choice. You have to make the same choice twice. It's going to be doubly embarrassing. Well, that version is the version that actually got in. That draft version is the actual version of the two minibuses that they're going to vote on in January and February, not the one that they thought was in there. And it either he didn't know or didn't care, or he promised the Democrats in exchange for some votes that's how it would go, and that's what they negotiated. And they're calling him Judas and a Benedict Arnold and blah blah blah. And both of those are in there now, and they were in that draft one, and that's the one that everybody voted on. That was my favorite vote since the Obamacare. No, since the infrastructure bill, which was pretty great too.
Yep. And old Chip Roy is standing outside Matt Gaetz' office with a baseball bat every time Matt Gaetz steps outside. So I will beat you to death.
Right. You oh my God. Watching Chip Roy just lose his chip on the House floor.
That was great. That was great. I can't stand that man, but that was great. That was absolutely amazing. Name one damn thing we've gotten done.
Hey, no lies detected, dickweed. And the weird thing is, I'll tell you what you did. You got something done. They accomplished something. They got Moody's to lower the expectation of the credit rating of the United States from stable to unstable. That's it. It didn't bring it down from AAA. There was a worry that it would, because the idea is that if they don't pass something, that's what was going to happen. Part of the pressure to get it passed was because of that. But that's what they got. That's what they actually did, because it didn't go down because we couldn't pay our bills. It went down because we wouldn't pay our bills. And that's what the concern was for the bondholders and all that kind of stuff. So Moody's made that measurement, and we went from stable to unstable momentarily for a couple weeks. And that is all that firing McCarthy and all that. It didn't change like one fucking dime of the budget, how it had been laid out under Nancy Pelosi, that was going forward. It's not going to. It will not. There won't be major, cuts in the budget going in January and February. Not going to fucking happen. There's going to be a bunch of backbiting and sniping between Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's going to be like rinse, repeat, bitching.
Who's your daddy, Mike Johnson?
Right.
Who's your daddy, Mike Johnson?
That's right.
Who's your daddy? Come on, say it. Who's your daddy? Who is your daddy?
Joe Biden.
Hakeem Jeffries is what is keeping you and the Republican Party. Because absolutely, people don't realize that Hakeem Jeffries saved Mike Johnson's ass. And that's why it got split the way it did. That's the way it got split. That's why it got split the way it did, because Hakeem Jeffries absolutely knew the Republicans were going to own 100%. That was going to be the headline. America's credit rating tanks because of this shutdown. That was going to be the headline. That was what was going to be the discussion going into this next election cycle.
Right.
And Hakeem Jeffries made the deal to get us through the holiday season, because, what's better going into an election season than a
Right.
holiday season where you've already seen it. The Black Friday deals, the
Yeah.
discounting is there. The CEOs have figured out that the inflation has been insane. People aren't going to buy this year. So the discounting is going to be huge. So people are going to have a good Christmas. I mean,
Hmm.
all of that role we're going to take into the next
Right.
election cycle. And
Yeah.
Hakeem Jeffries, thank you, man.
Yep.
Love you.
Yeah. And
Thank
the
you.
and the overall budget itself is punted till 2025. So they can't even revisit this part of it. That they the extension he got under McCarthy for the debt ceiling is effectively through 2025. There's no threat there during the election year because honestly, I think McCarthy and them thought if they could not have to have this argument, which always screws them, which is one of the reasons you didn't have a red wave. It was too tight, and that was because of the they didn't trust people about the debt ceiling. And then they pull this shit about the budget and then firing McCarthy and that kind of stuff. So they don't really have anything to run on next year. The idea that they want to talk about budget fights and that's going to be their sales point. That's the weird part. Post-COVID, in a world that's on fire in a bunch of places, one where it wasn't before and one where it always is, and the potential for that roiling out in other places. And these motherfuckers want to sit everybody down around the kitchen table and argue about the cable bill. It just makes them look petty and stupid and in some cases an agent for the other side. I do want to,
And you've got to give them a hand. They did do one thing. I mean, one major accomplishment. And I try to explain this to people, and people don't get it. They got Democrats to show up not in an off year, but in an off year election.
Yeah,
I mean, my God.
Yeah, the turnout, and that's also shaping a lot of their decision making, and that's how it should be. Again, this is why if you're in a red state, you always vote blue and vote directly with the Democrat that's running there, because without a mandate or a fear of a potential mandate eventually, or a recognition that there are more blue voters in this district than I thought, instead of people just go, well, it's going to go red. You want your vote to be counted because you want these people to be nervous about their job and that there might be a trend in this direction, and then they have to pay attention to you a little bit more. If you don't vote because it's already leaning that direction, in a red district or you're fucking Montana or some shit like that, if all the people who are registered to vote would show up, this country would look very fucking different in terms of Democratic representation, even in a lot of red states. Let's be completely honest. But by staying home, the red state Chip Roys don't really have to be scared of you because they get 60%. If they got 53%, then they start mitigating their bullshit. Then they stop all this fucking fire and brimstone talk and recognize that they might have to deal with another group of voters eventually, because if 5% of their voters get turned off by something, that's all the other side needs. So that's why you got to show up in the red districts. And in the blue districts, you got to show up because you add to the mandate, the volume of human beings in this country. And that's where you make them recognize we're never going to have the presidency again unless we turn this around. That's how it has to be. So blue state voters need to always come out in force for the Democratic presidential candidate, so that the Republicans are like, fuck, we're going to be a regional, minuscule party unless we get our act together. And then they have to start listening to you. Then you start seeing stuff move down the road. And the Tommy Tubervilles and the Chip Roys of the world get broomed. Yeah. Other than that, I have no opinion. I will say, breaking news-ish, that David DePape has been found guilty of assault and attempted kidnapping of Paul Pelosi. Paul Pelosi actually testified to what happened on that night, and so did DePape. He actually sat down. I don't know why, but he fucking testified on the stand, probably because he's a fucking lunatic. But
he has no decency whatsoever. I mean, to put that family through a trial, to make the government go through a trial, they have him. It's on videotape.
Yeah,
it is literally on the cops' body cam of him swinging a hammer at Paul Pelosi. There was no case here to argue.
Well, and also,
he forced the government and that family to go through a trial. That's why I hope his prison sentence I
Yeah.
hope he serves life in prison, and I hope he has one of the most eventful times in history of anybody
He's
that's ever gone to prison.
Well, interestingly enough, that's just the California, that's the San Francisco case against him. There is still a federal case against him, which is a much longer time. He's got a maximum sentence in this one of life in prison, but it's life with a possibility of parole in California because that's how we're nice in California that way. Federal system is not nice that way, especially when it comes to the attempted kidnapping of the Speaker of the House, the person, second in line for the presidency. And the thing that's I want to remind people and why I think this should be more of a story is remember when Elon Musk, when this story came out, they were floating all this
Oh,
like anti-gay horse shit that this was Paul Pelosi's lover, and it's because it's San Francisco and
mhm.
that's gay and gay and like Glenn Beck did the same
Paul
thing. It's
Pelosi was
all
in his underwear. Why was he in his underwear
because he was
when you can see in
fucking
the video that
asleep.
he's fully frickin' dressed?
Yeah. Same reason the guy had a hammer because it was the middle of the night and one person was victim and the other one was attacker. But he literally, DePape on the stand said, repeated all the shit that he had said to Pelosi, but also said he was going to kneecap Nancy Pelosi. He was going to, like an 80-year-old woman, he's going to hit her in the kneecaps with a hammer, crippling her as a warning to other Democrats. Like, and he it was kind of like fucking like bragging a bit about it, which thank God, because I love. I mean, the only thing better than a guy who confesses and saves everybody the trial is an asshole on the stand who thinks they can charm their way out of it. I'm talking to you, Don Jr. Um, but yeah,
And,
that's good news.
Gavin Newsom gets to decide. He's going into the California Bureau of Prisons, and Gavin Newsom actually gets to decide in the law. I mean, it doesn't
Hmm.
matter where he lands coming out of trial. Doesn't mean he's staying there.
Right.
Gavin Newsom gets to decide where this man serves his sentence, and
Hmm.
I hope to God it is the worst shithole prison that California has.
Well, California has a really well put together prisons. The only problem is we don't have enough of them, and people get dumped. Violent criminals sometimes will get dumped out of the California system because of overcrowding, because there's a law about overcrowding, and there's not a real impetus to build more prisons because we're still on that school to prison pipeline narrative that ate its way through and created this essentially this farce that America has more people in jail because we like to jail people as opposed to our prisoners survive. Of all the, let me be abundantly clear. There's a reason why we have more people in jail than China, because people in Chinese jails die. They don't get medical care. They don't get. They don't survive. Like the most of the people who die in prison who aren't killed by a fellow inmate die of old age, and that's weird in the world. That doesn't happen hardly anywhere. I mean, Northern European countries and the UK and other places where people often make comparisons between the prison system in the United States and the prison system over there. They have a similar situation too, because when they bother to keep somebody in jail for a long time, it's because they've like that white supremacist that shot up that camp, that those kind of guys that are never getting out. They live a long life. They don't have a death penalty in a lot of those countries, so those people die of old age. That's what happens here too. Most of the people who don't get out early die of old age, and we provide them with health care and 3 hots and a cot for the rest of their lives. And DePape will get that. DePape will be for the next. I mean, if he gets parole, it'll be 25 years minimum because
Yeah. Yeah.
because and the federal on top of that. Now I mean it's interesting. After the federal sentencing, I don't necessarily think Newsom has a say in that part of it. So if he ends up getting moved to a federal correctional facility, which he probably will because it gets him off of Newsom's plate as a defendant. If say Newsom wants to run for president at some point and they call DePape
And
a
even
political
best
prisoner
behavior
and block
federal,
him.
he served 9 for 10.
Yeah, and yeah, but he's not gonna for a assault and kidnapping where you hit somebody like that, elder abuse, blah blah. There's a stack of things where the person you are against can't defend themselves. It's not another dude your age in a parking lot, and used a hammer. There's a whole lot of mitigating factors on this. There's no fucking way he's in jail less than 25 years. Check staff chat. Oh, beg your pardon. From Dan Balls right now. Get it right. A challenge into a debate. Then ask him to send his contact info so he could book. Days later, no response from his. That's from Venmo. I'm game, but the guy who puts up a Venmo QR code begging for money to play. I gave him the thing. That's hilarious. I guess people are contacting him. That's good news. Puts a Venmo. Yes. By the way, I don't have the Venmo QR. Thanks for reminding me, Dan Balls. I don't have the QR code on my morning guest show. I have to remember to put that on there. Yeah, that's good. By the way, Dan Ball pays OAN to have his show on. He pays to be on his network. Yeah, which I think is hilarious.
I did not know that, Al. I did not. That's hilarious.
Yeah. I found that out as well when this all came up. Yeah, cool. All right. And asked him to send his I literally put my contact info in the tweet. I tweeted below. I responded to his tweet with my contact info. It's book HAL at iCloud. Anybody wants to dump that in, like HAL actually gave you that weeks ago. We haven't heard from you. So do it again. Just everybody go. It's bookhal at iCloud.com. Put it in your fucking chain. Go for it. I told him to check his show contact info and DM me. Make that excellent. Thank you, Andrea. I like going to San Diego. San Diego's nice. You know, that's where, because they do that. They do his show out of a garage in San Diego, right? Isn't that where OAN is? Its headquarters are in, run the show out of a garage in San Diego. Because it's.
So how long do you think True Social is going to hang on?
Oh yeah. Well, I think more than likely Trump and his ilk are shoveling some of the money from his that he's getting from his supporters in there to keep it afloat, to pay the staff and all that kind of stuff as campaign, because let's say you pay them as campaign staffers as well as running the site, because they're boosting his Truth Social shit so you can overlap those jobs, and that keeps them in there and lowers the cost of the site itself for a while, just because I think he thinks it helps him as the trial. It's his output, and if it crashes, it just looks so fucking embarrassing. I think they're scrambling like fucking crazy to keep that thing afloat.
I kind of think that right after Judge Engeron gets through with just absolutely torching his business, that's when you're going to see it go. I think, and I also think that if Trump's going to run, that's when he runs. When that reality of his business evaporating happens,
right?
And think about it, because it's going to be a domino. All of his businesses are on the, every one of his properties are on the edge.
Yeah.
Every one of them. And when he starts incurring loss after loss after loss, there's nobody to float him any more money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who's going to loan him money at this point? You know,
right?
It's just going to be one domino after another after another.
Again, Russian inflation being what it is.
For?
There isn't a lot of money laying around out there for him to pull from, and you'll see them selling properties and using that property to balance against another piece of property. So they could start jettisoning the lesser known Trump properties under LLCs, or restructuring when they're really selling their chunk to their partner, and then just removing their name from the branding agreement so they can take out 75 million here and 20 million there to pay the interest on some of the shit, just to keep it rolling. And you could do that fucking flim flam for years. I mean, it has been. You could argue that that's how they kept most of this shit afloat. The sale of the old post office, that money, besides whatever's been eaten up with his legal fees, that money has basically gone to keep Bedminster and Mar-a-Lago afloat in terms of the business there. Mar-a-Lago has
Doral is a revenue. I mean, it is
suck.
The overhead on running Doral is freaking huge, man.
Right.
It is huge. I can't wait for that. I cannot wait for the forced sale of Doral. That is going to be. I am going to be. You're not going to be able to. You're not going to hear from me. I'm going to be so
drunk.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be the best week of my life.
Pour one out for Doral. Yeah. Right. Oh man. The weird part, I got to say, is going to be the sale of Bedminster, which is going to happen at some point. because his fucking ex-wife is buried there. What the
Yeah.
fuck? How do you like exhume that shit? Right?
Break
Honest to
out
God,
tobacco, man.
I don't even understand the and maybe they just go, we cremated her anyway. That's a bunch of shit. That's a marker on nothing. It's an empty coffin. I don't care. Whatever. We filled it with sandbags. Blah, blah. Who knows what he'll end up saying? But even just the premise of like, hold on, you own a commercial property, and you buried your kid's mother there. Yeah, the fuck. I mean, it's like it was gross when he did it. It gets grosser every day.
Yeah.
And like Don and Eric and them just kind of like breezing past this shit. Dude, I gotta say, like, I love my dad very much. He's a good man, good, solid guy. And we, during our teen years, like any father and son, we had, I had my differences during my teen years. I had my differences with him, but like, I love my dad and I love talking to him. I love hanging out with him. My dad, if my mom passed and he buried her on like the site of one of his buildings that he's an architect, at like on the side, they bury him. I'd bury him under her. What? Are you out of your mind? Like I certainly would never fucking talk to him again, and I certainly wouldn't come to his fucking defense. Right?
Yep.
Like,
well, I mean, what are they going to do, man? I mean, can you imagine how terrified these freaking morons have to be?
Right.
I mean, they're in their freaking 40s and have never earned a legitimate living in their lives.
Right.
Everything. Don Jr.'s tried 2 or 3 different businesses. They've all bellied up.
Oh yeah,
all of them.
But you don't think Patriot phone loans or whatever the fuck he's selling, like they're all going to be selling fucking Jim Baker style prepperware, like it's Tupperware for the end times. You can just burp your beans while you're down in your. All you got to do is take an old kerosene holder, big tank that you usually find. You can get one for about $75 off an old gas station that no longer works anymore. You bury that in the ground. You just climb in like it's a submarine. Put a little fart vent on one side of it or whatever, and you just live down there till Jesus comes. Like that. What are they gonna do? Yeah, selling gold-plated coins.
That's the part that always cracks me up there, Hal. I mean, I don't mean to go like crazy left turn here, but you brought it up. These preppers. Okay.
Yes.
If you're in the end times and we are all really fighting for survival, and you know how populations turn on each other. Do you want to be buried in a box underground?
Right.
Do you know how easy it would be for me to take everything you have by plugging one vent? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Right.
Funnel it in some CO2, wait a couple days, come back, and go shopping. I mean, this is the stupidest stuff I've ever seen.
Dude, parts of the Midwest, you just be walking around looking for like these like below ground lids. Open them up. It's full of water and 3 corpses. And you're like, well, hand me my snorkel. The canned goods are probably all right. And you just dive in and get their shit. Like all the boxed. Hey, these guys put their box stuff in plastic bags. Here, there's some cereal. That's the part missing, I think, from the Walking Dead storyline was, coming along and finding like these things with like worn out, decayed zombies that can't move because they all ate each other. As the last person in had bit somebody and and then 6 years later oh God, the fucking smell. But look at the cans of beans.
I tell you, man, and just a little advice for the audience. If you really want to prep for the end times, make friends.
Yes.
You know who Donnie Dust
community.
is?
Yeah.
You know how Donnie Dust is? He's the guy that makes all the Stone Age weapons and stuff on YouTube. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Real cool looking dude with the long gray hair. I have an agreement with Donnie. When it all goes south, he and I get to hook up.
Dude, why do you think I know how to fly a plane?
I'm in Donnie's tribe, man. I'm
Right.
telling you, forget that hold up in a bunker underground shit.
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna have so many freaking friends. You're gonna walk
Yeah.
up and there's me, old Texas Paul, wearing shorts and like cut off
Right.
overalls, holding a
Right
beer that
then
I
away
yeah,
again, Margaritaville. Put in
Margaritaville.
that video cassette of Chip Roy freaking out on the floor. It's my favorite sitcom these days. Glug glug glug. All right, we went over, but I want to thank you, Texas Paul, for coming on the show, and I'll remind everybody: is it Sunday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 9 a.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. Central, wherever you are. Yeah. And then that'd be 11 o'clock Eastern. There, makes sense. I don't know why I started talking like a Norm Macdonald there for a second. You gotta watch that Texas Paul there. You ever hear tell of him? Yeah. So Real Texas Paul. That's on your Twitch channel, right? Twitch.tv/Real Texas Paul. Is that how it works?
Yeah,
Uh, yeah.
yeah. And man, if you get a chance, you mind if I plug something?
Not at all.
Come get your gobble till you wobble mugs at the
Excellent.
TexasPaulStore.com. I'm telling you, all the way through Thanksgiving. I'm telling you, I got to get rid of these mugs, man.
All right, gobble till you wobble. Get them at the Texas Paul store. Drink you warm cider out of that. Keep your belly happy. Keep you get a little coffee in there. Get you even keel against all that turkey juice that makes you all sleepy during the game. You don't want to miss. You don't want to doze off at halftime. Yeah.
If you buy two, I'll make you part of my Margaritaville end time plans.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Yes, you'll make the list. Perfect. Thanks so much, Texas Paul, for being with me. Appreciate it, brother. We'll do this
Always
again
good to see you, my
sometime.
friend.
You too, absolutely. Thanks so much. All right, I'll talk to you later. And chat room, thank you guys so much. And yeah, everybody just tell Dan Ball that I literally replied to his shitter account with right away, right after he asked, with book HAL at iCloud. Haven't heard from his fucking stupid booker. No, I don't know if they're stupid. They just need a job. It's wrong. Maybe they just hate his guts too. Probably. It's who knows? It might even be makes something he makes his kid do. That would be terrible. But anyways, they can reach out. And better not leave me here. Oh no, CSL, I got you. Don't worry. You believe me. You'll get a code 7. You and Mark will have to meet me at the airfield. And I'm not going to say which one on the air. And because of people who don't deserve it might figure it out. But anyways, we'll just go around, fly around, picking everybody up. By the way, in a sky full of like Piper Cubs, because that's dozens of other people who have that plane. Plan. Anyways, plane plan. Yeah. So, anyways, I will see you guys later on this afternoon. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. Happy Friday, everybody. And take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. I think pass that along. Remind everybody that you can, when you got your shit together and you start working on getting your shit together, or you finally get your shit together, you can help other people, and that's one of the biggest reasons to do it. I'm just saying. All right.